Hey, what's good with it, YouTube? This is your boy Rojo, and this is the Rojo Room, man. And today what we're going to talk about is Sacramento and a couple of the major, groups that are in SAC, man. Those being the Oak Park Bloods, ZILLAS, and all that, and G-MOBB, Stars Up. Rumor has it, somewhat of an involvement in what happened today in SAC. It's just a rumor, you know what I mean? But it's a rumor from multiple sources. Could it just be hearsay? Could it just be whoop-de-whoop? Could somebody have just been wearing red? Of course, you know what I mean? Time will tell. It'll come out, whatever happened. There are way too many cameras and all that kind of stuff. People are gonna end up in custody behind it. There's no doubt about it, man. But a little bit of history, man. There's been some, back and forth between these two particular groups for a considerable amount of time, man. And what we'll do is we're going to go back a couple of years and talk about some activity that happened in 2017 all the way up to 20. But anyway, man, this is from davisvanguard.org. Don't really know nothing about them, but talk a little bit about it, break it down, man. But Sacramento. The Sacramento man's preliminary hearing for a gang-related murder charge concluded last week, and it didn't go well. On September 28, 2017, the defendant, Laquan Solomon, drove up and shot and killed another Sacramento man as part of a series of gang-related shootings, alleged the Sacramento District Attorney's Office. Nearly 3 years later, on June 18, 2020, Solomon underwent preliminary hearings in front of Judge Lawrence Brown in Sacramento Superior Court. Kristen Anderson prosecuted the case, while Pete Harnon, a former prosecutor, represented Solomon. Solomon is facing 3 counts: murder, discharging a firearm from a motor vehicle, and prohibited possession of a firearm, according to the Sacramento Superior Court case access system. Anderson called forward 2 witnesses, both Sacramento detectives, during the afternoon session of the preliminary hearings. The first detective was questioned about the movement of a white Buick around the scene of the shooting. According to the detective, the white Buick can be seen from surveillance cameras around 3 a.m., the time of the shooting, entering the same area where the shooting took place on Earnhardt Avenue west of Franklin Boulevard. The vehicle could be seen soon after exiting onto Franklin. Hard, on recross, kept his question brief. He asked if there was any footage of the area of the shooting, to which the detective responded, no. Then he asked if there was any way to know if someone had gotten out of the car. Again, the detective said no, but added that no other car was seen going in or out of the area at that time. The second detective was called in as an expert in African-American gangs in Sacramento. Anderson questioned him in order to identify Solomon as a member of a Sacramento gang. The prosecution began by leading the detectives through an explanation of African-American gangs in Sacramento. The detective explained that there are 2 prominent rival gangs in Sacramento: G-MOBB, Stars Up, and the Oak Park Bloods. Within the Oak Park Bloods, there are multiple subsets, according to the detective, and one of those subsets are the Underworld Zillas, or Ride-Zilla, which are essentially the same group. According to this detective, this group claims about 50 members with no particular hierarchy. After an in-depth history on the antagonistic gangs, the prosecution proceeded to have the detective explain how he is able to identify who was in the Oak Park Bloods. As they went through the known validated members of the Oak Park Bloods, the detective relied mainly on tattoos, neighborhood affiliation, and with which group Oak Park Blood, or G-MOBB, did arrested individuals asked to be placed within custody in order to substantiate his conclusions. The prosecution then turned the detective's reasoning toward the defendant. Specifically, Anderson was focused on whether or not the detective could identify if Solomon was an Oak Park Bloods member in 2017, which was the time of the murder. The detective based his answers on reports he had reviewed involving the defendant's social media, tattoos, and phone and videos found on the defendant's phone to determine Solomon was in fact an active Oak Park Bloods member at the time. The prosecution then turned to a police report from 2015 to show the defendant had previously had in his possession a firearm similar to the one discharged at the shooting. According to detective notes and recollection of the report on August 13th of 15 at 9:50 p.m., the defendant had been seen on Sacramento light rail with a shotgun in his backpack. The defendant had claimed that he was holding it for a friend because it was hot, which meant to the detective that there were a lot of police around at the time. The defendant was identified as having a backward Z tattoo on his neck and was known as King Zilla, according to the detective. The prosecution then moved on to the many shootings of prominent gang members in 2017, leading up to the shooting the defendant was in court for. At the beginning of July, a member of the G-MOBB had been shot and killed. Later, in 2017, Solomon had to drive a friend who had been shot to the hospital. In September of 17, 2 more murders took place, both of these well-known G-MOBB members. Shooting in a short period of time sparks all kinds of problems, says the detective. Respect is synonymous with fear. The prosecution then submitted 2 exhibitions to illustrate that Solomon was in fact an active Oak Park Bloods member at the time of his alleged murder. Defense counsel then had the opportunity to cross-examine. He asked the detective if it was reasonable to say that a young Black man who grew up in a poverty-stricken neighborhood had no choice but to associate with the gang. The detective responded that that's not reasonable. Defense counsel then asked if it could be as simple as wanting to not be beat up. The detective responded that it could be, but must be more than just wanting to not get beat up. Harn claims that because Solomon had a backward Z on his neck, that was evidence that Solomon had dropped out of the gang by that time. Sounds kind of suspicious. Defense counsel ended by asking a series of questions related to the detective's ability to identify if the defendant had actually posted certain photos or videos on social media. For the most part, the detective was unable to. In final arguments, they focused on one main point. There was not enough clear evidence that his client was the one who fired shots from the white Buick that killed the victim. Anderson broke down her final argument, saying that it was clear to her the defendant was the driver of the white Buick at the time and place of the shooting. She stated the vehicle belonged to him. The driver was wearing a unique sweater that Solomon had worn before, and he had admitted to being the driver at a later time. Second, it was clear to her that Solomon was the shooter. The driver's side of the car was on the side the victim had been shot from. Additionally, a shotgun was fired and there was gunshot residue found in the driver's side of the car. Based on the evidence and testimony the witness presented, Judge Brown found that there was enough evidence for all 3 counts to proceed. Judge Brown added that the enhancements the prosecution had added to counts 1 and 2 were also proceed. Well, there's a little story about the beef that's been going on between these 2 specific Sacramento area groups. You know, this is why I chose this to read, is because you see a body here, a trip to the hospital from a gunshot, 2 more bodies on that side. You know, and, you know, there's a rumor going around that this is a continued, you know, escalation of the things that have transpired between these 2 groups. Time will tell. Too many people there, too many cell phones, too many, you know, this happened right after 2 in the morning. There's a lot of clubs in downtown Sacramento. Hundreds of surveillance cameras from businesses. Everybody on their phone taking pictures of this and videos of that, drunk. There's way too much footage and technology involved to think people are going to get away. Unfortunately, for those on the run, that's not going to be the case. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like there's a lot, you know, Sacramento has really, really become quite a place where this happens frequently, you know, just in the last 10 years. You know what I mean? I mean, Sacramento's always been about that action, Oak Park, El Paso Heights, you know what I mean? But the levels of violence coming up out of there recently has been really, really high. You know, they found a gun left at the scene. You know, there's touch DNA, there's all kinds of stuff nowadays. So this case would probably be resolved fairly rapidly. And the fact that it's gaining national attention is only going to push for, you know, the district attorney's office in Sacramento, as well as the agencies involved, to resolve it as fast as possible. They got the whole the whole city of Sacramento is working on this right now. So it's only a matter of time. We'll have the definite answer if it was, you know, these two groups, you know, or just some random thing. You know what I mean? There's a couple people, you know, that seem, I mean, there's 3 women dead, 3 men dead, you know, and 12 others wounded. they're gonna pursue this like with the resources you can't believe, man. So in a matter of time, we'll know. And if it's any one of them groups, man, there's going to be all kinds of stuff coming for them groups, even though if it was only the actions of a few. That's just how it works. Anyway, just want to touch a little bit on Sacramento. You know, there's things flying out that these 2 particular groups may or may not have been involved. So I wanted to touch on that one time. And hey, chill out, man. Chill out, man. There's thousands of people out there that have no business being a part of that, man. It's your boy Rojo. This is the Rojo Room.